All right. There. Um, all right. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. I'm going to go through just a short PowerPoint. Again, you guys, some of you have not muted your microphone. Please do that. We're hearing your talking in the background. Thank you. All right. I'll have to go back out. So we are recording this. The purpose of it is to try to find an option that I've discussed with our board of some way that the region can help everybody to remedy the problem of unpaid fees. And really, in my opinion, the answer is simple, but there are some logistics that are a little difficult that we'd have to work out the details on. So just a little background is I've been doing, I don't know, I think over 30 years now, and we, for a long time, up to about 3 years ago, did get involved in unpaid fees. And I'll say we're probably in what we call the Judge Judy business, and then place people on a suspension. And for the most part, it worked. And even people that hadn't paid for a couple of years, when they went back, wanted to get back into the as a member, either as a player or even a coach, they caught their fees up. So the system works. The problem is both USAV and our legal department both said that we just could not do that because we legally are not partners with clubs. So anybody willing to push it would easily win because we cannot be involved in that part of it because we don't have a partnership with you. You're independent. So with that said, the idea is pretty simple. And here's what I wanted to say is some people say, well, I'm not sure I want to do it. But the old saying is what goes around comes around, meaning that if you haven't had this problem, you will. It's just a matter of when, not if. Every club will face families who leave with unpaid fees. And the solution, which is pretty simple, is that we all work together on families with unpaid fees. So the details on it, in my opinion, for doing it for so many years and what we faced as a region are the following. One, everybody's got to agree to enforcement. In other words, it doesn't take too many clubs to say, no, I'm not going to do it, for it to fall apart. And like I said, they're going to end up with a shoe on the other foot one day where people owe them a sizable chunk of money, and there's really not a lot you can do. You can take a person to court and get a judgment, but that doesn't mean they have to pay. That just means they sell some type of real estate or something. It's on there. It's a judgment on there, but it's not a whole lot you can do on that part of it. We'd have to set guidelines and rules that everybody would have to abide by. We'll talk about that in a little bit. There needs to be an appeal process, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, which is due process. You'd need a review committee that would review the facts on the case. You'd also need black and white guidelines. And I can tell you, we may start out with revision 1 and through the season have revision 2 or 3 because things do change and people find ways around certain things that we don't think about. And I think parents must know about it. I think it's got to be a region-wide knowledge, is that so they know. I can tell you right now, there's a number of families that I've seen over the years that just use the system. They go from one club to another club to another club because they know that they can stick them and not pay and just leave and go somewhere else. And they take them. Well, and they may not know anything about it. There's got to be no padding of the pocket. As I've said over the years, when we were involved in it, we saw a small amount, but it did happen where clubs knew that it was going to be a suspension and they padded their what was owed with additional expenses. And like I said, it only takes one. It really, if one, two, or three clubs decide not to do it, it's probably going to be very difficult to enforce. And sometimes the parent's right. I've found cases where a club did not fulfill their part of the bargain. And in that case, the parent had absolutely due process rights to walk away. And that's something that you'll have to, get a committee that's looks at these cases and listens to both sides. That's not all the time, but I'd probably say out of the 10 times we'd get something in, there'd be 3 times, maybe 4, that a parent is objecting to what is owed. And finally, you must agree to the review process. I'm suggesting that if we do this, we form a committee to work on the details. Some of you guys here across the state, small clubs, big clubs, different areas of the state, stuff like that. So that's the short part of it. And then my little tip over here is don't stress the tryouts. Now, we're going to open it up to some discussion, but before I do that, because I stuck this on the PowerPoint, I want to talk to you about this quickly. This is something else. USA Volleyball nationwide is putting out a program called Try Volleyball for free. I don't have a lot of details on it, but it basically is geared for 1st through 8th grade. And I'm going to probably revise that and say 3rd through 6th or 7th grade. If they haven't tried it yet, by the time they're 8th grade, it's sometimes too late. But I hope that people would get behind this. I'll get you some more information. There's a lot of money going into advertising this, and basically it goes to a national site. The people put in what zip code they live in, and it takes them to that area, and you get some PR and stuff like that. So more information on that later. Now, let me stop sharing, get back over here. And what I'd like to do is hear from you guys what you think about this, pro or con. So unmute yourself and give me some feedback. I know there's people out there, so come on, somebody talk.
Jimmy, what kind of problem are we having in the region on this? Because we haven't had a problem with this.
Okay.
So is this a huge issue that's happening with multiple clubs and that's why it's being brought up? Like what's going on?
Well, I don't know if it's a huge problem. I know I have a number of clubs each year since we quit doing it, write me and say, is there anything you can do? We've got Joe Smith that owes $2,000, and they've just quit responding. And what can I do? I tell them what they can do, but there's not a whole lot they can do about it. So I don't know that there's stuff. I can tell you this, in running a club for 20 years and being in this position for 30 plus, it does happen. And I'm shocked that you've not had anybody fail to pay fees.
Well, we did. However, they charge back on their credit card. and we sent the copy of the contract to the credit card company and they backed us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we didn't have an issue because we had a contract from the beginning and the credit card company backed the contract.
Yeah. Well, I would like to hear from other ones. Certainly, we're willing to help if it's a big enough concern that everybody would want to do it. But if it's, if it's not, you don't want to agree to it. The reality is if, and I still say that it's not will it happen, it's just when it happens, is you will have families, if you're been in business long enough, that doesn't pay you for one reason or another. And there's not a lot you can do. You can threaten and take them to small claims court, but you don't get a check at the end of, after the judge says you win or whatever. But if there's enough interest and you want to do it, we will be glad to help coordinate that. We just can't be involved in sanctioning or suspending a member as a region. But if you do it, the big picture is if everybody agrees and Club A has somebody that owes them $2,000 and they leave there and want to go to Club B, and Club B is familiar with it and knows about it, which is that something that we would have to help and coordinate, is put some kind of list out. Then Club B says, we will not accept you until you settle with Club A. That's the simplicity of the overview. So other thoughts or concerns? And if everybody thinks it's not a concern, I'm fine, because it's just extra work, but we'll be glad to help coordinate that if it's something that everybody wants to do.
Hi, Jimmy. It's Julie from Rising Tide. Whether it's a big problem or a small problem, I do think it's an issue with some of the smaller clubs and the newer clubs. And I'm all for it, and especially if people know about it. My question is, how are you going to track it? Are you going to have a database that's shared with everybody?
Yeah.
And then how, obviously there's a lot of clubs in the region. How are you going to get everybody to agree to it?
Well, I'm not going to twist anybody's arm. That's why we're having this tonight, and we're recording this. Then I'm going to send it out to everybody, and I'm sending a survey out. Do you want to do it? Do you want to participate in it? And then we would actually need to form a committee of you guys to work out the details. I think simplicity, as far as knowing it, we could create a web page that says, here's the people that only, directors can sign into. There might be some other ideas that come out where you're actually notified via email or something like that. But it'll be during tryouts, in which, since these are coming up for some clubs in the summer, it probably is an issue that we need to address sooner than later. So logistics, there are some logistics to it. And I'll cover a couple of these real quickly, because these are things that we ran into as a region. So we have to set up guidelines and rules as to notification, are the expenses legitimate, stuff like that. And then you need to set up an appeal process and have a review committee, which is similar to what we did. When something came in, I would pick 3 people outside of the club that was owed the dues, or some other part of the state, and have them review the facts on it. We actually had a form that was, they had to state their reasons, both the club and the member state their facts, and not a book. It's got to be within a certain amount of words. Otherwise you have somebody that writes a book. The review committee, some people just said, yeah, I owe the money. So it's clear cut, black and white. But if they disagree with it, then you got to have some kind of review committee. And then we got to, I think both we and you guys can notify the parents that this is in force, so that they are aware of it. Because their reality is, there are parents out there that'll skip from one club to another and skip out on their payments. And then, there's some other logistics that would have to be worked out. Anybody else?
Wait, I got one more follow-up, but it's basically, if everybody doesn't agree, none of this matters anyway. I mean, all this
Right.
committee and all this talk like moving forward. So step one is everybody has to agree to do it.
Correct.
And then if not, this conversation is kind of
Mute.
mute.
Yeah. And the quick survey, just straw poll, I think most were in agreement, but raising your hand and signing on the dotted line that says I will do this, and it just takes one season to figure it out. You'll figure it out pretty quickly. If they're trying to say sign Sarah Stud and she hadn't paid her fee with the other club, and what happens, I think what I'm talking about is that everybody understands that I'm just using some fictitious name. If Sarah Stud didn't pay, we need a form that understands, that everybody can read. It's the same form for everybody, that they understand why, what the club A puts down and says, here's what happened, here's the reality. And then the members put down their statement, and then that's open to the clubs that are dealing with it. So I think the solution is simple, but whether it's got to be everybody's got to agree to it or it doesn't work.
Jimmy, this is Valerie.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I've been in this about as long as you, so I do remember the time when players were getting sanctioned. However, I feel like I'm sure you guys have enough on your plate, number one. Like, why are we even getting to this point? I'm willing to get on board with it. I just feel like, number one, you've always said have your players pay before the season starts. So before January, you've collected all your fees. So if they're not paid, they don't get rostered by me. I won't put them on. So that's kind of a way of securing myself. And then if they don't and they want to quit, well, then they can go. There's other people waiting to play this game. So I'm a little confused as to why in the management part of it, we have this issue. Now, I've been with War Eagles 10 years, but Carolina region before that. And I've never had in 30 years a player who got rostered that couldn't pay me, that didn't pay me. We also fundraise. I also have scholarships. I do what I can to help them financially, but if it is I'm jumping from club to club, well, they can go. You know what I mean? Like, go ahead. And if you want me to, if another club calls me and says, hey, Sarah Stud trying out, like, I'll be honest with them to say, exactly what happened. And if you want her, you can have her. So I guess that's my opinion of it. That if you are working it, and you're compassionate with the people, and you're working with the parents as much as you can, then you can avoid this problem, and it doesn't need to be your problem, unless you're going to sanction. So if you're not going to sanction, then I'm not sure why we're getting involved with all this. I certainly don't have time to do extra, like to be on this committee. My head's just barely treading water as it is, with tryouts coming on so soon and everything happening all so fast. So that's just my opinion. I don't feel like it needs to be an issue for you.
Well, thank you. And I can say you're in the minority if you've gone 30 years and never had a parent stick you. This is what I'm going to say. But there are clubs out there for whatever reason, numerous reasons, that do get stuck. I mean, I talked with one just last week that's got about a $3,000 debt. And some of it's their fault because they've let them go that far. But, it's typically a primary player that, it's going to hurt the team or fold the team. But regardless, obviously we are not asking for more work, but we're in the business to service the clubs. And one of our services, in my opinion, is to help you for the ones that that want it or need it. I suspect there's 50% or more that has been stuck owing money at some point or another over the years. And I don't view this as a lot of work. I think it's just notifying that, okay, here are the people. And if there's people that, if the parents disagree with it, it needs to be some kind of appeal. Just like we had it when we were doing it years ago. We had an appeal process, and I just picked 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3 club directors, and asked them if they would listen to the appeal. So, and if they didn't have time, then that's fine. But again, I'm not asking for more work, but I'm certainly willing to help the clubs if there's enough need, if everybody's in agreement to it. And maybe it's not utilized, but a few times a year. Who else?
Jim, this is Larry.
Yep.
I think you put your finger on it. A lot of times it's a stud player on a team that'll hurt the team to lose that player. And club director may know that there may be family things going on and they don't want to punish a kid because their parents aren't getting things together. And they keep giving one more chance and one more chance. And the next thing you know, you've let the kid play through the season and the parents have just fully taken advantage of it. And you don't want to punish the kid for what the parent has done, but at the end of it, there's money owed and that needs to get paid. Or like you're saying, there needs to be just a couple of club directors get together and hear the case out and say either you owe it or you don't. And that's the end of it.
Yeah. Well, and for the ones that are on here, when we're done, I am going to send out a survey to everybody and find out if this is a concern that everybody wants to address and do something. And if not, we're fine. But if it is, whether you've ever had it or want to have some kind of protection in the future, we're willing to assist coordinating it. And when I say work on a committee, I just mean we need to get a group of people to just work out the details, probably in the next 30 days, because tryouts are starting. I actually had one club that's only notified me they're going to have tryouts soon, like next week or 2. Anybody else?
So
Okay.
one question is, if you're not going to sanction them and we're just going to have this committee, what keeps them from leaving anyway? Is the other team in agreement not to take them? Because I can tell you my competitors would take them in a minute. So they're not going to be in agreement. Across the to Carolina region, they're going to go somewhere.
Yeah, and in your case, when you're on the border, and if they go across the border to another club, there's obviously nothing we can do anyway, but we are trying to work with clubs inside the region. And the simplicity is, Valerie, if everybody's in agreement and the family owes Club A, then Club B is agreeing to not accept them until the fees are paid off. And there's only 2 circumstances that I know of, is the club and the family both agree that fees are owed and that's the correct fees. And they say, and nobody in the region will take this family until it's settled with Club A. The other case, when you have to get an appeal done, and you just got to have this legally for your protection, everybody's protection, is you got to have due process, is the there are times that a parent is right because the club A did not fulfill their contract. You know, they didn't have as many practices. They didn't go to the tournaments they were promised. Blah, blah, blah. Whatever the case is, sometimes the parents are right and they didn't pay the fees because of that. And you got to have a committee that kind of hears that and makes a decision. But then, and I'm just suggesting that. I think this ad hoc committee that I'm talking about would have to decide what those rules are and what happens if it's disagreed on, you know, who makes the decision that the family actually owes the money or nobody takes them. I mean, if it worked when the region was doing it, it's just we can't anymore legally, but you guys can. You can just say we won't take them, and that's the same thing as a suspension or sanction until somebody takes them. And then it doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, that's the thing.
All right. Well, if there's, I mean, unless somebody else has got some comments or something, I'll send out an email. We'll find out of all the clubs who's interested in. I'll send this recording out and a questionnaire. Find out who's interested in doing it. Whether you've ever done it before and you want to have some kind of protection in the future. Again, we're glad to help. And if you don't, then we're fine with it. That's, you know, less work. But that's what we're thinking about. Any other thoughts or comments before we get off? Okay, one last plea. I'll be sending out some stuff to register for the 25 season, but we, as you know, we're doing this all region invitational tournament the 29th of June, and it's been very successful. We've got 640 kids attending Rock Hill for a one-day tournament. We are short about 8 or 9 coaches that could possibly be close enough that they would drive without. We're just splitting hairs on trying to charge enough to cover expenses and let them have fun and just, you know, enjoyable and recognize them as all region, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, if you've got some coaches that are that would drive up there and coach for the day, we are paying $150 a coach. You know, they're not going to retire off of it, but it's just giving back to the game. If you would reach out to me, I would appreciate it. Other than that, I don't have anything else. Regions, I mean, a lot of stuff going on for the region this coming year, and I'll give you that information. We are having, for your information, we are having a Zoom call with USAV to cover Sports Engine and the startup, and it's kind of a Q&A session with the key people with Sports Engine. So that's kind of a relearning process, unless you're totally comfortable with it. But if you've got questions or you're kind of new to the club or you got new administration that needs help, that'll help. And that's coming up in the next 30 days. Guys, thank you very much. Hope you have a great Memorial Day. Any questions, I'll be on for a couple of minutes. I'll be glad to answer afterwards. Otherwise, look for my email. Thank you.